Hello everyone and welcome back once again to Nintendo Power Time Machine. This time we're looking at Volume 59 from April of 1994 with Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball on the cover. Before I begin, I should mention that these magazines have taken quite a bit of damage over the years. I used to cut out little pictures of them and put them up on my wall many years ago, not really considering the fact that maybe 15 years down the line I'd be doing an internet review of these magazines. But what can you do? So without further ado, let's take a look at the contents and get started. The Player's Pulse this month doesn't offer a whole lot in terms of entertainment, although it does have this creepy picture of these kids with these disembodied Mario masks, and the eye holes only help to make this picture all the more disturbing. First up, we have our cover article, unlike was the case with last month's issue. Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball presents quite a few new additions to your standard baseball game for the time, including a full 162-game season, complete rosters, and specs of the team's actual fields, meaning that you get a different dimension to the game depending on which team you're facing. And let's not forget about our pooped-out pitchers. I said poop. The article also covers the offensive and defensive strength of each team, just as Nintendo Power did with NBA Jam. But my biggest gripe about this game, however, was the freaking start screen. Seriously, who allowed this into the final version of the game? He could not look more like a monkey. If the title weren't right there, I would almost assume I am playing the video game version of the movie Ed. But let's just move on. Alright, now this is what I'm talking about. Star Trek: The Next Generation. This game features just about everything a Trekkie could want in a game at the time. Being able to change the specs of your ship, working on your diplomacy skills, taking down some generic bad guys on away missions, featuring characters from the show that you get to choose yourself, and even some space battles. The magazine covers the first 3 missions of the game, and while marketing did a great job of having this game released just 2 months before the series finale of the show, it really hasn't aged that well, and therefore I can only really recommend it to the most retro of hardcore Trekkie gamers. Yes, I sadly felt the same way. But without stepping stones such as this, we might not have a game as polished as Star Trek Online, helping to link players around the world in missions similar to what this game had to offer.
I am not a merry man.
Well, no one ever said it was easy to please a Klingon. Next up is a Mickey Mouse game. Oh joy. This should be great, and just as you might expect, it's nothing special. Certainly no magical quest at least. And in Mickey's Ultimate Challenge, all you gotta do is work your way around an overworld, little more than 2 screens big, meet up with some of Mickey's friends in Banwick Castle, they give you an easy as hell puzzle game to get through, and that pretty much sums it up. It's most definitely a children's game, and while it doesn't really deserve any attention, the cost for Disney to pay for 2 pages in Nintendo Power is barely considered a drop in the bucket for them. So let's just deal with it and move on. Aw yeah, next up we got something that screams 90s. Excalibur 2097, and oh man, just look at that title. You got the obligatory 90s X, where Caliber is spelled wrong, and an arbitrary future year, all rolled into one. And we're not done yet. Oh no, the music of this game was brought to us by none other than Psycho Sonic. Yeah, I don't know who they are either. Well, let's get to the game. On the outside it looks like it's just another cookie-cutter 2D fighter, as you might have assumed by the screenshot here that looks like a combination of Blanca and Predator put together. But this game does apparently have an action platformer side to it, which the magazine covers the first 4 levels of. Oh man, how glorious the 90s were. Alright, if there was ever a time to shit your pants, it is now. Or at least it would have been in 1994, because this is our first major look at Super Metroid. It is a short but sweet teaser of the full review, which will come next month, and goes over the different upgrades to Samus' suit, the variety of new moves, and a glimpse of the maps for each area in the game. But tune in next time for a whole lot more on what would end up being one of the greatest games of all time. The next game we're looking at is Time Trax, which I had no idea was apparently a TV show at the time. From what I understand, the plot sounds a lot like Minority Report, but maybe that's just me. We got a list of the game's enemies, all of which probably look and attack in a very similar fashion, with the exception of this flamethrower guy over here. We also got complete maps of the first 5 levels of the game, which point out every single power-up that you can get. I mean, Jesus, could we use any more power-ups here, people? But what really won me over was the promise of a jet ski. Finally, something that tied me over until Wave Race comes out. It's time to fire up Highway to the Danger Zone, 'cause it's time for Turn and Burn, No Fly Zone. First couple pages of this article don't tell a whole lot about the game, just give some pictures in first-person perspective, which was a bit different from the usual side-scrolling third-person views of shooters at the time. We also get a look at some of the useful offensive and defensive techniques of the game, and mission objectives for missions 4, 5, and 12 for some reason. Why those particular missions, I have no idea. But at least it does teach you how to land, which would have been incredibly useful in other games such as Top Gun. Flipper Frenzy! I have no idea why these pinball games deserve a 2-page spread, but I do actually own Super Pinball, and the thing it does best is making you wish that you owned a real pinball machine. And now for part 3 of the Super Metroid comic. Houston, get out of here! The planet is dangerous! Oh my god, there are too many of them! Samus, watch out! Ah, spike traps! It's like I'm in some sort of video game! Don't worry, I'll get you out of here. I know I should eat this burrito, but my finger looks so yummy. Alright, Samus, we are somewhere else now. I should help you. I did create Samus' suit after all. Will our hero survive her injuries and save the world? Tune in next time for part 4 of Super Metroid. This time around in the Counselor's Corner, we get the first half of a walkthrough to another very underrated RPG for the NES, Crystalis, which for all intents and purposes was the original live-action RPG. If you love Secret of Mana for the Super Nintendo, there is no reason why you shouldn't love this title. It's got a great characters, a great story, and you can get it pretty cheap for less than $10. I highly recommend it to any retro gamer out there. I was wondering what was going on over at Interplay Studios. Turns out they've been working on games for gamers by gamers, like a sequel to Clay Fighter. You know, the game everyone wanted, just like everyone wanted Luigi's Mansion 2. They talk a bit about the Lost Vikings, which ended up being a surprisingly good tactical game, and Blackthorn, which is one of Blizzard's very first games that I also recommend trying out if you have the means. There's also info on the Lord of the Rings game, with pictures of them developing the sprites for Gandalf and a goblin enemy. Oh no, that looks like fun at work. What would any good issue of Nintendo Power be without a look at the Game Boy? This time we're checking out Prehistoric Man. It is a pretty standard fare when you're talking about a platformer like this. You got stage maps, power-ups, and shortcuts. Nothing special here, but it isn't too surprising when you consider that this is 1994, and the Game Boy was pretty much on its last legs by now, with only 4 games scheduled for release in the next 6 months or so. And speaking of last legs, our final game of the issue is the Jungle Book for the NES. Just like with Prehistoric Man, we get looks at the stages and explanations of the icons in the game, but at this point just about every Nintendo gamer who could afford it had made the jump to the Super Nintendo. Jungle Book isn't half bad of a game though, despite the fact that it's licensed. The sprite animations when in action really push the limits of what the NES is capable of, and is a great example of how the NES didn't go down without a fight, and is quite frankly good to the very last game. Just like with previous issues, this one features a Players' Poll contest for all the soccer players out there. In 1994, the World Cup was being held in Los Angeles, and because of that, Nintendo came out with a promotion for it, with the winner getting a chance to see the final matches of the World Cup in person. They would also get an official ball and duffel bag, along with a copy of World Cup USA for the SNES. Seriously, magazines really need to go back to having contests as great as these were. Well, that about wraps it up for this issue. Join me next time as we look at Volume 60, featuring a hugely detailed cover story on Super Metroid. And now as a bonus, can you name the end screen to all these Super Nintendo games? Leave me some comments with your answers, and I'll see you all later.